thank you for having me. My name is Eric Powers. Most of you know me as Ranger Eric with my presentations that I do across Long Island. I'm here today to talk to you about a project that's near and dear to my heart, something that started off well over 20 years ago. And the basic question that I was trying to answer so long ago was, why are the tick populations rising around Long Island? And that led to some very interesting studies. And in fact, I was able to bring, I think it's the first ever Bioblitz to Long Island to try to get to the heart of this matter. And those of you who are not familiar, a Bioblitz is a whole 24-hour inventory of all the biological components in a park, in a defined area. And in this case, it was out of Smithtown to a place called Caleb Smith State Park Preserve. We had all sorts of scientists there studying the plants and animals within that 24-hour time period. And we were able to come up with a list of all the critters that we were able to catalog in those 24 hours and compare it to a list from 1969 when the state park was first designated. And we compared those two lists, and we discovered that many of the creatures that live on the ground or nest on the ground were either much reduced or absent. And maybe the one most notable was the Bobwhite quail. And these are animals that don't migrate, and they prefer to walk and not fly. And with the absence of the Bobwhite quail in this environment, it really showed that this animal is really kind of our front line of defense against ticks. And without the quail, we are seeing a huge increase in the tick population. So that's an oversimplification of it all, but at any rate, that was what our findings were. So obviously, I work with a lot of teachers across Long Island. I do a lot of live animal shows and whatnot. And throughout the year, I always have teachers asking me if they can, they're doing life cycle studies in school and they're raising chickens or ducks as part of their life cycle study. So then when it's time, to do something with the hatched birds, they're always looking for homes. And I always have to say, no, they're not native animals and I can't take them. And finally, it dawned on me one year that, hey, I want to bring the Bobwhite quail back. So why don't I ask teachers to switch from chickens or ducks and simply just buy Bobwhite quail eggs? Then I can raise those up to adulthood. I can also get a license from the DEC to release these animals and merge these two projects together of helping teachers with their life cycle studies, but also then have a source of Bobwhite quail that we can raise and put back out in the environment. And what we're seeing is even though it may be a temporary effect for a few months, we are seeing a reduction in ticks after we release them in a particular area. And this is year 19 now that we've been publicly working with schools across Long Island. And of course, we did take a bit of a hit with the project because of the pandemic, but this year, indeed, we are back at full force. So let me just show you here. So this is an example of the male and female. I also have some nice taxidermy specimens here. You can see the differences between the males and the females, where the females, when they're on the nest, they really need to be able to camouflage. Remember, their nest is on the ground in the grasses, so they really need to blend in super well. And the males have this bright white on their face. And as a matter of fact, I love this picture because this picture encapsulates what the male is doing every spring, and that is calling. And what he's doing right now in this call is he's saying, just like that. And if you kind of listen, kind of use your imagination, it kind of sounds like he says, Bobwhite, just like that. So they're just a stunning little bird. I'll do it one more time. Ready? Like that. And so this time of year in the spring, that's what I'm out there listening for, are the males calling for the females to set up this year's spring nests. So, and that's how we know, that's really the only way we know who has survived through the winter. These are very cryptic birds. They camouflage perfectly well. So you're not just going to go out and typically see them on a birding day. You've got to be listening for them now as they're calling. And they're going to raise their little nest of baby quail. And now this is Dad taking the kids out for a walk around the field. And so basically this is quail school. This is what quail school would look like. And so as part of our project, we have to, serve as quail parents and teach them the right and wrong things to eat. But I got to say, there is a lot of instinct in these birds. So we see that after they hatch, you might get 2 or 3 days, of them not being so afraid of you. But by day 4, their natural instincts kick in, and they're going to start being very fearful of us. And it just gets progressively more and more fearful, and they just instinctively know, like when we put them in the outdoor pens, we've had hawks fly over the pens, and they know to duck. We bring a therapy dog into the pen, and they know to fly. So they have different responses to different sort of predators. But this is Quail Dad taking the kids out for some education there. So I just wanted to kind of go over what our project is aiming to do here, and I've tried to summarize it up right here for you. So we're trying to help the bobwhite quail in this area by raising some of the quail and getting them ready to live in our fields and forests. And of course, by helping the quail, we're also helping ourselves, because quail eat a lot of bugs that bother us, like ticks and grasshoppers. They also eat seeds of plants that become weeds. So when you think about it, they don't migrate. They're here all year. So if they are, eating bugs all spring, summer, and fall, then in wintertime, their bug source pretty much dies out or migrates away. And so they have to switch to the only other thing available to them, and that's going to be seeds. So where are they finding all these bugs and seeds? Well, first off, you want to ask yourself where quail are living. And they're going to need to be where a field meets a forest, okay? So this is an early spring. This field really hasn't grown up yet. And as a matter of fact, for maintenance purposes, so trees don't take over the field, it was mowed the previous year. But in this photo, the grasses will grow back to about waist high. And I always like to ask the kids, has anybody been to a real wild field before? Not a soccer field or a golf course or something like that. And if you have been in a real wild field before, then you could probably tell me some of the bugs that you saw there. And so let's think about it a second. In that field, what are you going to see? You're going to see spiders, mosquitoes, midges, butterflies, grasshoppers, roly-polies, ants, termites, so many of these bugs that live outside. Of course, ticks, right? That's what we're talking about today. So those are all the bugs that bobwhite quail will eat. So I'm not here to tell you that they just eat ticks. That would be false. They eat an assemblage of things. But I've been studying quail now for quite a while here on Long Island, and I've had the fortune of just following a little covey of quail around. And they do really use the field and the forest throughout the day. They slowly weave back and forth in and out of both of those habitats, depending on what they need at that time. And one thing I've learned from just watching them is if they've come across, I don't know, let's say some ants that are starting to, send out new queens or something, that they'll take the time and just start focusing in on those little ants and just, hammer away at just eating them. Meanwhile, there might be a big grasshopper right next to them that they completely ignore because they're focused on what's abundant at that moment. So, and we have to assume that they would do that with ticks as well. So of course, ticks would love to eat bigger stuff, grasshoppers, crickets, bugs like that, and also ticks. So here's a picture of a tick. And of course, they switch to seeds in the wintertime. So I wanted to take a moment here to talk about ticks and what to do if you do find a tick on you. And it's best to find a tick while it's still walking around on you. So once they've bitten, we may need to take a little bit different course of action. But I've taken to a little habit of carrying a roll of cellophane tape with me when I go hiking, which is almost every day. And if I do find a tick walking on me or one of my dogs or a friend or something, then all you need to do is to pick that tick and get it between your fingers like this. Just hold on to it. Your skin here is going to be too thick for them to bite through anyways. The reason they're going to walk all over your body is they're looking for a spot where you have thin skin and they can hide and be out of the way. So they're going to be looking for places like your waistband or where your socks end, or the inside of your elbow or back of the knee, places like that, the back of your neck, hairline. So they're going to be looking around for a little place to hide like that. And so if you see a tick walking on you, that's the best time to find it. And there's no way it can transmit any sort of disease if it had it while it's just walking around. So you're well within the safe zone. So you can just pick a tick, and then I pull out my tape, pull out a little piece of tape, and I stick a tick. So pick a tick and stick a tick, and then fold the tape over itself. And just like that, it's encased in tape forever and forever. And as long as you seal the tape around it, there's no way that it can get out. And in fact, I have a whole tick collection of examples like this that you can see. And here is, this is a deer tick right here. I have others. This is a spotted tick, or a lone star tick, as some call it. And this is the wood tick here. So three different types of ticks that we have now. I've even been told that we have a fourth, but I haven't found that tick myself. So, and it's real interesting. Here's some other ticks. When you have them in tape, you can even test it out and show other people like what a tick would look like on you, how small they are. I have freckles that are bigger than this tick right here. Indeed, and I do find them on my dogs. So you do need to protect your dogs by going through. And I do the same thing. I just stick the ticks in tape. If it has bitten you though, then you need to take different precautions. You'll need a pair of tweezers or some sort of a tick puller, and really get between your skin and the tick and just give it that slow pull out. You don't want to just rip them out like that, because then you could break off mouth parts and that could cause an infection or something. So you just want to do the slow pull and convince the tick to to release its mouth parts and come right out of you. And then for sure stick that tick, and then maybe even write the date on it, because if it did transmit any disease, it may not show symptoms for a long time. So it's nice to have that tick. It could be tested or other stuff like that. So, but I'm not a medical doctor, so I don't, I'm not going to talk about that kind of stuff. But I'll keep it to the biology stuff. All right. So we did talk about the Bioblitz oh so long ago, and how many species of birds or many species of animals had kind of been wiped out, especially those that are living on the ground. And it's because of we have a new predator that had never been seen on that original survey in that park that I was telling you about. And so in here are predators of quail, but we have a new predator now, and that happens to be the house cat, the domesticated cat. And I guess people just don't realize that by letting your cat go outside, that action is having profound negative impacts on our environment here. And so cats are they're supposed to be domestic house cats, and they really need to stay indoors, because when we're letting them out, they are just really having a devastating effect on our local ecology. So unfortunately, Fluffy the house cat here really needs to, be kept under better control. And I always like to point out that it's really a cultural shift for us to think about. There used to be a time when the Europeans had moved to Long Island, and they just let their cows roam everywhere. And it became a problem at some point where your cows are interacting with my cows and we got to keep them separated. So then we had a cultural shift, and we built corrals and we separated them by fences, and I would keep my cattle under control and you would keep your cattle under control. And then years later, the same thing happened with dogs. We used to just let our dogs roam everywhere, and then it started to become a problem. So now, our culture adapted to keeping our dogs under our control in our property. And now we've got to change once again and adapt to these current situations. And by knowing that your cat is having such a negative, horrible impact on our environment, collectively killing billions of birds every year, that certainly you would want to do the right thing and keep your cats in your property as well. So our culture still has to adapt and shift to that new kind of thinking, and that alone will really help. I think bringing our bobwhite quail back and starting to get some sort of natural controls using quail to control our tick populations. And yes, the number one predator of the quail used to be the fox and the Cooper's hawks, but right now it's by far the number one predator is indoor-outdoor cats or feral cat colonies. So the quail really need our help so that they can help us. All right, so I get asked a lot, and I just took a phone call before this, as a matter of fact, where somebody said, hey, you know what? I got a bunch of ticks in my backyard. Can't I just release a few there? Well, unfortunately, no. Just because you might have a big, grassy yard, that is not appropriate habitat for a quail. And just because your neighborhood has some trees, that does not qualify it as a true forest. So that is not the ecosystem that a bobwhite quail needs to survive and thrive. So we do have some public quail releases, and we've noticed that when we release in an area, we'll release, 100 or more into an area, and they will, after a couple of days, they'll start to, what I like to call covey up. And covey up means they kind of select out of this 100 birds, they kind of carve out, 10 or 12 of their favorite buds that they want to hang out with, and that is going to become their covey. And that covey is going to look after each other. They're going to, they're going to forage together. They're going to, look out for each other when they're sleeping, all that kind of stuff. And the covey, it's cute because they all sleep with their tails in the middle of a circle, and so each one of them is looking out from that circle in a different direction, looking for predators all night. And if they do see a predator coming, they have to alert their friends in the circle, in a clandestine way to not make any noise, but to yet alert their buddies. So that's what a covey does, is they look out for each other, and they travel together. And we see that these coveys radiate out sometimes 10 or 12 miles from the release sites. So look at the coverage that we would get from just 3 different release sites. And so the more schools that participate in our quail project, the more birds we'll have to release. Obviously, we have far more requests for birds, to be released than we have actual birds. So, so we definitely need to get the word out to help us out. The eggs are very much smaller than chicken eggs. So there you see some brown chicken eggs next to the bright white of the quail eggs. And here is a hatched quail egg. And these are getting quite delicate now that they're drying out. Here we go. And you can see here when they hatch, they chisel along a single plane there, and it has the effect of opening the egg, kind of like a can of tuna fish or something, It just pops it right open, and then they can squirm out of that egg and be hatched. And here's what they look like at 1 day old. They're about 1.25 inches, 1.5 inches tall. It's just the cutest little small things, but they grow up remarkably fast. So this is a short-lived, living fast and furious sort of a bird. So here they are, 1 day old. Look at that. Halfway through, so this is their teenage years at 6 weeks old. And to full adulthood, basically at about 12 weeks old. You can already in that picture start to see the males having the white on their face. So if you'd like more information or to sign up to join us, you can go to our website, seedli.org. And of course, SEED is Long Island's newest nature center. We're the Center for Environmental Education and Discovery. So, and this is our first conservation project that we've taken on as an organization. And so we just need a lot of people to help out, volunteers to help organize and plan, as well as a lot of schools, libraries, and even individuals who want to get in on incubating some of these cute little birds. And there it is, just newly hatched. Now, once they've hatched from in the incubator, we have to wait until their feathers have dried and fluffed before we can move them over to what's called the brooder. And that's where they're going to start getting fed and watered in that situation. So, but look at how cute and innocent this little baby is. They're just so adorable. But let me tell you, those instincts kick in pretty quickly, and like I say, by day 3 or 4, they're going to be terrified of you, and there's no handling them like this. So this is definitely a day 1, maybe hour 1 photograph. All right, so what can we do to help? So obviously we can help raise some of these birds and put them out back in the environment to go eat ticks. I also encourage landowners, especially farmers and park managers and stuff like that, to maintain some fields. And everybody, we love to plant and have forests everywhere, but it's also important to have a mixture of habitats so that we have some fields and some forests. That's what creates a healthy diversity of our wildlife, is to have a diversity of habitats. And so here's an example where a farmer just didn't plow one last row and just let the grass grow, fallow basically, right next to the forest. And then we had released some quail there. And the farmer said that he actually saw the quail walking out into his field, eating the bugs on his crop. This wasn't a tremendous size field, but it was significant. And because the farmer then didn't want to spray poison, spray pesticides on the field because he saw the quail eating the bugs, that he was like, I just decided not to use pesticides that year, and he actually had a better harvest. So he was thinking, he was like, you may have something here. And then lastly, we've got to learn some new ways of keeping our cats under control. And I did live in Manhattan for a couple of years, and I was surprised to see cats on leashes. Just like I had my dogs on leashes, there were cats there as well. I didn't know you could leash train cats, and since then, I've seen many examples of leash trained cats. So that's totally possible. You can build, if you don't want to do that, you can build something called a catio, or maybe you already have a patio and you just want to convert it into a catio where your cats can go outside but aren't able to, interact or kill any wildlife out there. And so there's many other techniques that you can use. I personally have always had cats, but never once did we think of opening the door and letting our cat outside. So we've always just had indoor cats, and they stay happy and healthy and live to a ripe old age. So, which is what I think the best cat life would be. All right. So of course the moment of truth is the release, and these birds are ready and raring to go into their freedom. So what you're seeing here is one of our releases. It just happens to be at the same park I was telling you about at Caleb Smith State Park Preserve. And of course we make these a public event because we want everyone that helped to incubate these eggs and brood them to come for the moment that we've all been waiting for. And that's the release. So here is about 300 birds that we are trying to kindly escort out of the pens. And you're seeing how they're huddled together here, and they don't want to leave the safety of the flock. So as soon as one bird would take off, then a whole bunch of others will take off with it. So it's very much about moving as the flock, moving as a covey, as I was talking about before. So here they go. They're going to go out and find their way. They have these locator calls that they're going to find each other again. And like I say, they're going to covey up, and they're going to head out and go do what bobwhite quail like to do. And that's go eat bugs and lots of ticks as well. All right, so thank you for your time, and please, if you want to help us with this project with financial support or help incubating eggs or volunteering to be a quail parent and raise them up, we need help at all these different steps along the way. So thank you guys so much for everything, and I look forward to seeing you guys out there in the fields and forests.